Hello, Algebra 1. We are taking a look at our 10.2b samples. We are preparing for our quiz 10.b, where we are showing our mastery and understanding of finding the range and the mean absolute deviation of the number of a particular data set. In this case, it will be of the number of text messages that 6 students reported receiving in 1 hour. So here's the number of text messages that they reported receiving in 1 hour. We are going to find the range and the mean absolute deviation of this particular set of data. So first, finding the range, that's the easier of the two measures of dispersion that we are looking at. How far are those values apart? So the top number, 73, that's a lot of text messages in 1 hour. And then the lowest number was 9. So we're going to find the difference between the highest and the lowest numbers in our data set. So 73 minus 9 is 64. So the smallest and the largest number of text messages received in 1 hour is 64. They're spread apart by 64 text messages. So that tells us that there's quite a bit of variability to this data set from 9 to 73, a total of 64 different text messages. All right, so now we're finding the mean absolute deviation, and it's going to give us a kind of a more specific value of the measure of dispersion. It's going to say, well, where are most of the data values falling? Between what and what? The issue with just using range as a measure of dispersion to find out how variable your data is you're typically working with the extreme values that can be far away from a lot of the other values in the data set. So the mean absolute deviation is saying, well, where do most of the data values fall between? So to figure out that answer, first, of course, you are going to find the mean, or the average of your data set. So that would be adding all of the values in your data set, 20 plus 9 plus 32 plus 16 plus 54 plus 73, and dividing that by the number of values in your data set. There's 6. So divide by 6. 204 divided by 6 is 34. So the mean of this data set is 34. So the number of text messages on average that were sent in 1 hour were 34, knowing that the smallest number was 9 and the largest number was 73. Now, to find out the mean absolute deviation, we take that average of 34 and we find the difference of all of the data values in the set and 34. So we're going to subtract all of the data values minus 34 to see how far apart they are and take the absolute value, because we really don't care if the data values fall above or below the mean. That's why we're taking the absolute value. And here's our calculations. So 14, 25, 2, 18, 20, and 39. That's how far each of those data values are away from the average or mean of this data set. That totals to 118 when you add up all these 6 numbers, and you're going to divide that by 6 to find out that the mean absolute deviation is 19.7. Well, what does that mean? This means most of the data would fall between 34, the mean, plus 19.7, or 34 minus 19.7. You're going to go up and down below the mean, 19.7, both directions, and most of your data will fall between whatever that works out to be. 34 plus 19.7, 34 minus 19.7. That is, most of the data values should be somewhere between 14.3 and 53.7, which they are. So some of our extreme values don't show up when we are finding our mean absolute deviation because they're more extreme than most of the others. So this just gives us a narrower range of how much does our data typically spread out. Okay, that's all for these samples. It's time for you to move on to the quiz for this lesson, and we'll see you next time.